as a potter. And my question for you to open us up is, I have seen your work in the homes, in the businesses of the affluent all the way down to the ground. What part of your work as a potter and your connection to people's everyday lives, what does that speak to you? What does that say to you and your life's work?
It all goes back to, I always was drawing from 8 or 9 years old. I was a vivid memory. I was drawing. I was copying a Donatello sculpture out of a magazine. I think it was 9 or 10 years old. And it was late in the evening, and my father came home from work, and my mother ripped it out of my hands. Look what he's doing! And at the time, I thought it was, oh, wow, he's an artist. Now, with the perspective I've had after all these years, is, oh my God, he's going to be an artist. Can't you be a doctor?
Can't you be a doctor?
So anyway, I went away to art school, and I did just want to be a classical artist. I went to Pratt as a freshman in 1961, and I immediately learned that if you are an artist in New York City, all these famous artists came to teach at Pratt, and you had to be an abstract expressionist. And I said, we had a French guy who was a fellow student of mine at the time, and he said, you have this wonderful word in English, in American, bullshit. I also always wanted to be an art teacher.
Wait, what does it mean?
Bullshit.
Oh,
You go out in the field and there's a cow.
I thought it was an Italian word.
That was French. Maybe his name was Roger. He was from Paris. Anyway. So I went away to art school, and I said, first of all, I always wanted to be an art teacher too. So I enrolled in art teacher education at Pratt. And so we had to do this foundation year, and then you had to do sculpture, ceramics, and all these other courses. And of course, in my sophomore year, I made my first pot. That was in 1962. And I was just blown away. Stuck in the mud, just enchanted with clay. So by my junior year, I was a full-scale ceramics major. And lo and behold, I had a classmate, and his father lived in Alfred, New York, and he was a potter. And he knew, he knew these gods of pottery in the 60s. He had, I started going to his house, Andy's house, for Thanksgiving, because at the Thanksgiving were people like Ted Randall, Robert Turner, Val Cushing, and these are names that maybe, because I'm so old, you might not have heard of, but these were, Alfred was just the highest achievement of ceramics at that time. Now, there's so many people like me who got their masters in ceramics that we all were teaching in high schools all over. But that really influenced me because I got to talk to all these potters and go to their studios and just talk about their work. And the most influential one happened to be a guy named Lynn Phelan, who was the father of my classmate. And he just talked about being the village potter. So that stuck in my mind. But to make a living, I got various teaching jobs. And I was teaching in New York City public schools, and a friend of mine who was the head of ceramics at Pratt, I was still living in Brooklyn. He said, oh, Karen Carnes is coming to teach a course. Why don't you come and drop in and talk to her? And I did. And she had me, she was another one of the goddesses of ceramics in the 60s. And she influenced so many people, including me. So I just went in, not as a student, but just talked to her. And so she had me make pots because she came down once a week, she would have me make pots that she could decorate and do things to the way she was teaching. And she said, "Why are you teaching? You should be a full-time potter." Now, I was married for 1 year, and I said to my wife, "Gretchen, Karen thinks I should be a full-time potter." And she said, it was the opposite of my mother's reaction when you stole that door. They said, "Okay, I'll go to work, we'll build a studio, you make pots." So that was 1973. And I designed, I came up with what I have, what I'm doing now. Oh, in fact, there's a couple of pieces of mine, if somebody hasn't stolen over the other corner. I had my first studio in '69, and I was in love with making chalices, and there's one over there that's dated October 1971. And it's a contrast. I was trying to do the Alfred look, which is just high fire stuff, and it's all earthen, it's all grays or earthen colors. And then there's a casserole there that's dated, I think it's June of '74. And that was the beginning of what I'm doing to this day. It's the clay body mix that I'm still using, and the glaze that I'm still using. I just have different colors, and I play around with different temperatures and such. So anyway, Gretchen went to work. I went into the studio, literally up on a mountain into a studio. And in 18 months, I developed this line that I'm doing to this day. And I got into all the big craft fairs, Rhinebeck. I was on the board, I got onto the board, I was asked to be on the board of directors of American Craft Enterprises. That's the subsidiary of the American Crafts Council that runs all their major fairs. And so I just was doing these fairs, wholesaling, selling all over the country. And then what I do was, it wasn't like very fashionable at the time. A lot of these, if you go to the Baltimore Craft Fair now, you don't see any production pottery or functional pottery. You see art. In fact, I was the very last time I did the Baltimore Craft Fair, I think it was '88 or '89, somebody came into my booth and he said, "You're a GD dinosaur." Because and they were saying, "Oh, it's very cute how you're exploring the vessel." So I did a lot of teaching then, and I really loved teaching. I was, in fact, in my studio in Still Pond in 1984. We moved down from Pennsylvania, and we've been in Still Pond since 1978. And one day the phone rang, and a school over in Severna Park said, "We don't have an art department, and we hear you could design one for us," and I did. And I thought I'll just do that for a couple of years, but what went along with it was, oh, by the way, since you can teach Italian Renaissance art history, because that was always my minor, why don't you start a student exchange? It was school in Italy. So since I got a free trip to Italy every year, this is taking students. That was a wonderful experience. But anyway, then I retired from teaching, and I finally became the village potter. In other words, I'm at home, doing what I want to do, making what I want to make. My life right now is, since the pandemic, the Chestertown Farmers Market has exploded. Before it was just sort of a sleepy thing, and you just went to talk to your friends. And all of a sudden, when people came out of their shells and the farmers market started up around Memorial Day 2020, all these people were coming to Chester because we got thrown out of the park.
That's true, you did get thrown out of the park.
Because somebody wanted to have nicer grass in the park. And we probably
It's been resodded about 4 times since then.
But anyway, put us on the street, spread out. But all of a sudden, almost every customer I had was from a suburb of Philadelphia or Baltimore or Washington or Wilmington. And so people have discovered Chestertown. So now, on Saturday morning, I get up and set up for the farmer's market. I hope I can tomorrow with the rain. And I have such a great experience meeting people. And then I have to go home and take a 2-hour nap. And then from then on, I'm making pots for the next Saturday. Yeah. And that's been That's how I've developed. I've actually achieved what I wanted to do ever since I discovered clay. It's just sit at home and make pots and have people come and buy them.
Well, I feel like you've climbed the mountain. So we're looking up in awe.
Well, I'll say you. But I just have fun. The thing about, I just love clay. Just as soon as I got on the potter's wheel, I actually had the experience of starting my first ceramics course. They just threw me on the potter's wheel. As a teacher, I always started people with pinch pots, coil pots, slab work, before I let them get on the wheel and get frustrated. But I just took to it right away, and it was just, people often ask me, what do you like to make? I said, I don't care as long as I can play in the clay. Just so I can get on my potter's wheel. Oh, another thing that makes me old-fashioned too is I have a Randall wheel, if you know what that is, it's a kick wheel. And I use plaster bats. I mix my own clay. I mix my own glazes, because that's the way I was taught. I spent years in my apartment in Brooklyn with a little gram scale and all these little white powders. My landlady thought I was a drug dealer. I was doing what we call line blends, where you make a clay base, a base clay, and then you experiment with all the different oxides to give it color. And that's how I develop what I do to this day. I'm constantly coming up with new color ideas. This piece, in fact,
Got a little putty on.
oh, I didn't know it was attached. Can I keep that?
Oh, you can.
No.
You don't want it.
When I was a graduate student, I developed two base glazes, and they're both right here. But I'm constantly changing the oxides of them. But this is, I have some of my blue glaze here on that variable. I used to use 2% of cobalt to get the blues. I would probably have some blues over there on the shelf. Behind our house at Still Pond, there's 100 acres of farmland, and it's either in even numbered years soybeans, and in odd numbered years it's corn. And one August morning, I got up and looked out the bedroom window, and there was a haze over the cornfield. I said, I could do that. So I just took my blue glaze, it's almost a royal blue glaze, and I started taking the cobalt out of it. Those pots have 2% cobalt. I tried 1%, wasn't haze. Got down to 1/8% cobalt, and I had the morning haze over the cornfield. And then I tried it with the green, and the customer said, oh, that's the morning maize over the soybean field. And then if they ask me about my other combinations, I have to make up a story about it.